My name is Natalie Parker, and at 32, I never imagined my whole family would turn on me. For years, I was their emotional punching bag and financial safety net. The breaking point came when they screamed I'd ruined their lives and demanded I leave. So I did. I disappeared completely. No dramatic exit, no tearful goodbyes, just silence. A month later, my phone blew up with over 50 missed calls. But by then, everything had changed. If you're watching, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button if family drama stories hit home for you. I grew up in a modest suburban neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. As the oldest of three, my parents, William and Teresa Parker, were hardworking. Middle-class folks who ran a small hardware store that barely kept us afloat. From a young age, I learned to be the responsible one. By 12, I was helping at the store after school, cooking dinner for my younger siblings, and keeping straight A's. My sister Audrey was 5 years younger, and my brother Jason 7 years after me. Our family dynamic was set early. I was the reliable one, the achiever, the fixer. When anything went wrong, the blame naturally landed on me. If the store had a slow month, my after-school hours weren't enough. Jason got into trouble, I should have watched him closer. Dinner burned, I clearly wasn't paying attention. Natalie, how could you let this happen? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. Despite the pressure at home, I excelled academically. While my siblings got new clothes and the latest gadgets, I worked part-time through high school to buy my own necessities. When college applications came around, I applied for every scholarship possible. Knowing my parents had saved college funds only for Audrey and Jason, "You're so smart, Natalie. You'll figure it out," my mom would say, whenever I brought up college costs. And I did. I pieced together scholarships, worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop, and graduated with a marketing degree from the University of Colorado. Meanwhile, Audrey dropped out of 3 different colleges, all parent-funded, before settling on being a yoga instructor. Jason never even applied, choosing to find himself through a series of abandoned artistic pursuits, all bankrolled by our increasingly strained parents. After graduation, I landed a job at a growing digital marketing agency. My career took off, and by 27, I was a senior marketing strategist making a comfortable 6-figure salary. I bought a small, stylish condo downtown, drove a modest car I'd paid off, and built a respectable savings account. My financial stability became both my strength and my weakness. As my parents' hardware store struggled against big-box competitors, I started helping with their mortgage. When Audrey needed certification for her 5th career attempt, I covered the costs. When Jason totaled his 3rd car, I gave him the down payment for another. Each time, the money came with gentle suggestions about financial responsibility. Each time, my advice was met with defensiveness and accusations that I was showing off my success or judging their choices. Yet, when the next crisis inevitably hit, I was the first person they called. My personal life took a back seat. Dating was hard when dinner with a potential partner might be interrupted by crisis calls from my mom or midnight. Rescue missions to pick up my brother from questionable spots. My few serious relationships crumbled under the weight of my family's constant demands. My closest friend, Emma, warned me repeatedly about the unhealthy patterns. "They're using you as their emotional and financial crutch," she'd say after I canceled our plans for another family emergency. "They've made their problems your responsibility, and it's not fair." I defend them reflexively, their family. What else am I supposed to do? The irony was, despite being their perpetual savior, I remained the family scapegoat. If I couldn't immediately drop everything for their latest crisis, I was selfish. If I showed any fatigue from the constant demands, I was ungrateful for all they'd supposedly done for me. In family arguments, they presented a united front, rewriting history to paint me as the villain even when I was the only one trying to help. 2 years ago, things escalated when my parents decided to expand their failing hardware store. Despite my cautious advice, they took out a second mortgage, convinced that doubling their retail space would somehow double their business in the age of online shopping. When I voiced concern, my father accused me of wanting them to fail. Just because you've got some fancy job doesn't mean you understand real business, he snapped. I reluctantly co-signed the business loan, knowing they couldn't qualify otherwise. Within 18 months, the expanded store was bleeding money. My monthly contributions to their mortgage doubled, then tripled. My savings dwindled as I tried to keep them afloat while maintaining my own life. Meanwhile, Audrey abandoned her yoga studio for energy healing, requiring expensive workshops in Sedona. Jason moved back home at 25, contributing nothing while pursuing a music career that mainly involved buying equipment he rarely used. My parents enabled both while continuing to rely on my income to support the entire family. The pressure was crushing me. I started therapy, trying to set healthier boundaries while still supporting them. I reduced my financial contributions, suggesting Audrey and Jason should help with family finances. This simple boundary setting was seen as a declaration of war. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. By abandoning us when we need you most? My mother cried. The gaslighting was so effective, I actually apologized and wrote another check. My therapist, Dr. Larson, helped me recognize the manipulation, but breaking free from lifelong patterns was incredibly hard. I was trapped in a role I never asked for, but couldn't seem to escape. Your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice for people who won't do the same for you, Dr. Larson told me. Even if those people are family, I'd nod in agreement during therapy, but continued enabling their behavior. The consequences of standing firm seemed too devastating to face. What would happen to them without me? And more selfishly, who would? I'd be, if not, their savior. The breaking point was coming, though I couldn't see it. All the pieces were in place for the collapse of the delicate, dysfunctional system we'd built over 3 decades. And when it finally happened, it would shatter everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and myself. The pattern of blaming me for everything started so early. I can't remember a time it wasn't happening. When I was 7, my father lost his job. That night, I overheard him tell my mother if Natalie wasn't always needing those expensive asthma medications, we'd have more savings to fall back on. My childhood asthma, a medical condition I couldn't control, was somehow my fault. On my 10th birthday, my grandmother gave me a beautiful music box. 2 days later, Audrey broke it, playing without permission. I was punished for making her feel bad when I cried. I spent that afternoon in my room while Audrey was consoled with ice cream. In middle school, I won a prestigious science competition. My parents didn't attend the ceremony because Jason had a minor cold. When I brought home the trophy, my mother set it on a shelf and immediately started talking about how they needed me to watch the kids that weekend so they could attend a neighbor's barbecue. High school brought new dimensions. While I worked after school, maintained perfect grades, and handled household responsibilities, Audrey was becoming the family beauty. My parents spent money they didn't have on modeling classes and professional photos for her, while I wore secondhand clothes I bought myself. Natalie doesn't care about her appearance anyway, my mother would say, as if my practicality was a character flaw. When I was accepted to college with a partial scholarship, my father's first comment was, "Well, that still leaves a lot. We'll have to figure out how to pay." Later that week, they bought Jason an expensive gaming system for his birthday. The contrast wasn't lost on me, but I'd been conditioned to accept it. The summer before college, I worked 2 jobs saving for expenses. When September arrived, my parents drove me to campus, complaining about gas costs and time away from the store. They dropped me off with my 2 suitcases, while other parents helped their kids settle in with proper dorm supplies. Emma, my roommate, who became my closest friend, saw this and was shocked. "Did they even help you set up?" she asked after my parents left within 15 minutes. "They're really busy," I said automatically. the excuse I'd been trained to provide. College offered my first taste of freedom. I thrived, judged on my own merits rather than family expectations. My professors praised my work ethic. Friends valued my reliability. For the first time, my achievements were recognized, not minimized. This new perspective made returning home for holidays increasingly difficult. I noticed things I'd previously accepted as normal. How conversations always revolved around Audrey's and Jason's needs. How my parents would interrupt me but demand full attention when they spoke. How any accomplishment of mine was, quickly, dismissed while my siblings' smallest efforts were celebrated. After graduation, the pattern intensified. When I landed my first marketing job, my father commented, "Well, I guess all that college was good for something," as if my achievement was a surprise. The same week, they threw a party for Audrey when she completed a 2-day workshop on crystal healing. As my career advanced, their financial demands grew. What started as occasional help with utilities evolved into regular contributions to their mortgage, business expenses, and my siblings' various financial disasters. Each time I gave money, they acted as if it was the bare minimum, never a generous act deserving gratitude. 3 years ago, Audrey went through a messy breakup. My parents called it a family emergency and insisted I take time off work to support her emotionally. When I explained I had an important client presentation, my mother accused me of being heartless. "Your sister is falling apart and all you care about is your job," she said, ignoring that my job was supporting not just me, but increasingly the whole family. The real breaking point began building a year ago. The expanded hardware store was failing despite my financial support. My parents had maxed out credit cards, taken second and third mortgages, and faced bankruptcy. Instead of admitting their poor decisions, they blamed external factors, the economy, online retailers, neighborhood changes, and, increasingly, me. "If you had contributed more instead of spending money on your fancy downtown condo, we might not be in this situation," my father said during a tense family dinner. I was stunned into silence. I had contributed over $70,000 to their business in the past year alone. Money I'd earned through countless extra projects and sacrificed vacations. Jason, who lived at home rent-free and contributed nothing, nodded in agreement. "You've always been selfish with your money," he added, texting on the new phone I'd purchased for him last month. Audrey, fresh from a spiritual retreat I'd partly funded, suggested my negative energy might be affecting the business. "You're always so stressed and practical," she said. "Maybe you're blocking the abundance that's trying to flow to us." That night, driving home, I had my first panic attack. Pulled over, gasping for breath, I realized something had to change. The next day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Larson. "What you're describing is financial and emotional abuse," she said after I recounted the dinner. "The fact that their family doesn't make it acceptable. But if I stop helping them, they'll lose everything," I protested. "Natalie, they're already losing everything despite your help," she pointed out gently. "And they're taking you down with them. At what point do you save yourself?" I didn't have an answer, but the question lingered as family tensions escalated. My parents missed loan payments despite my contributions. The bank threatened foreclosure on both their home and business. Rather than address these realities, my family intensified their blame campaign against me. Every conversation was an accusation. If I mentioned work stress, they reminded me my problems were nothing compared to theirs. If I couldn't immediately give them money, I was betraying the family. If I suggested practical solutions like downsizing or bankruptcy, I was being negative and unsupportive. The situation reached critical mass when my parents received a final notice from the bank. They called an emergency family meeting, which I assumed would finally be about realistic plans. I prepared resources on bankruptcy, business closures, and housing options, hoping for a productive discussion. I was walking into a trap I never saw coming. The meeting was scheduled for Sunday evening. I arrived at 6 p.m., resources organized, mentally prepared for a difficult but necessary conversation. Their home, once well-maintained, showed visible signs of strain. The lawn was overgrown, paint peeled from window frames, and the kitchen faucet leaked rhythmically. The atmosphere was unusually tense. My mother avoided eye contact, ushering me into the living room where my father, Audrey, and Jason waited. I noticed Jason's new guitar, an expensive model I recognized. I briefly wondered how he afforded it, then pushed the thought aside. I brought some information that might help us figure out next steps. I began opening my folder. There are several options we could consider. We don't need your pamphlets, my father interrupted, his voice cold. We've made our decision. I closed the folder, confused but willing to listen. Okay, what have you decided? My mother cleared her throat. We've been talking and we feel the business could still turn around with the right investment. We've found someone willing to provide the capital. Hope flickered briefly. Had they found a solution without my depleted savings? That's great news. Who's the investor? The room fell silent before my father spoke. You what? Dad, I've already put in everything I can reasonably afford. I've shown you my finances. Not everything, Jason interjected, unusually animated. What about your retirement account? I stared at him in disbelief. My 401k? That's not an option. There would be huge penalties. Not to mention, see? Audrey interrupted, turning to my parents. Told you she wouldn't help. She's perfectly happy watching us lose everything while she sits in her fancy condo. That's not fair, I protested. I've been helping for years. I've put in over $70,000 just in the past year. And what good has it done? My father demanded Band-Aids. That's all you've been willing to provide. Band-Aids when we needed real solutions. My mother grabbed an envelope from the coffee table and pushed it toward me. We've already done the paperwork. All you need to do is sign. You can withdraw the funds as a hardship distribution with shaking hands. I opened the envelope to find loan documents, naming me as the sole borrower for a $200,000 business loan. Using my retirement savings as collateral, they had filled out everything, even forging my initials on several pages. Only the final signature was missing. This is illegal, I whispered, shock making me almost speechless. You filled this out in my name without my knowledge. That's fraud. Don't be so dramatic, my father dismissed. We're family. We're just helping move things along since you've been dragging your feet. The reality of what was happening slowly hit me. This wasn't a family meeting to discuss options. This was an ambush to pressure me into financial suicide. I can't do this, I said firmly, placing the papers back on the table. Not only would it wipe out my entire financial future, but it wouldn't even solve the underlying problems with the business. You need to consider selling or declaring bankruptcy. Bankruptcy. My father exploded, rising from his chair, and destroy everything we've built, ruin our credit for years. That's your solution. The business is already failing. I tried to reason. The location isn't viable anymore with the big box store. Online sales are taking another huge chunk. These are market realities we can't change. Always so negative. Audrey sighed dramatically. Maybe if you'd helped with the business instead of running off to your corporate job, things would be different. I turned to her, patience fraying. I've been working 60-hour weeks at my corporate job to support this family. When exactly was I supposed to run the store, too? Don't you dare take that tone, my mother snapped. After everything we've done for you, the familiar phrase triggered something inside me. What exactly have you done for me? I burst out. I paid my own way through college. I bought my own car. I've been financially independent since I was 18, while simultaneously supporting all of you. An uncomfortable silence fell. Then Jason laughed bitterly. Classic Natalie, making everything about her. Mom and Dad gave you a home, raised you. They raised you, too. But somehow I'm the only one expected to pay them back for it for the rest of my life. I countered. My father's face darkened with anger. I knew you'd turn your back on us when we really needed you. You've always been selfish underneath that responsible act. Selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. I've sacrificed my savings, my relationships, my own financial security for this family. How is that selfish? If you really cared, my mother said, tears forming, you wouldn't hesitate to sign these papers. You wouldn't let us lose our home. I looked at their faces, angry, accusatory, manipulative. Band suddenly saw with perfect clarity what was happening. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding a sacrifice. They expected me to set myself on fire to keep them warm, and they would still blame me for the smoke. I'm not signing, I said quietly, standing up. And I think it's time for me to go. You walk out that door without signing, and you're no daughter of mine. My father threatened, his voice shaking with rage. Audrey joined in, her beautiful face contorted with self-righteous anger. You're really going to abandon us after everything? You ruined our lives. Jason shouted, standing now too. We're facing foreclosure because you won't help. You ruined our lives. My mother echoed, get out. Get out. If you can't be bothered to save your family. I stood in the center of their fury, remarkably calm despite the verbal onslaught. Something had broken inside me, not my heart or spirit, but the chains of obligation that had bound me to this toxic dynamic for decades. I'll get out, I agreed softly, and this time I won't be coming back. They continued shouting as I walked to the door, hurling accusations and guilt like weapons. My father's final words followed me down the driveway. You'll come crawling back when you realize what you've done. But as I drove away, I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself, and it felt like freedom. The first night away was spent in a quiet hotel room on the outskirts of Denver. I sat cross-legged, on the bed, phone off, surrounded by unfamiliar silence. No crisis calls, no demands, no guilt, just the soft hum of the air conditioner and my own thoughts. The enormity of what happened hadn't fully registered. I felt numb, disconnected from the emotional hurricane I'd just escaped. I ordered room service, ate mechanically, then slept for 12 straight hours, the deepest sleep I'd had in years. Morning brought clarity and purpose. I turned my phone on briefly to email my boss requesting a week of emergency personal leave, then switched it off again before any family messages could come through. Next, I drove to my bank and opened a new account at a different institution. I transferred my remaining funds, ensuring my parents couldn't access my money. My next stop was a meeting with Carolyn, a lawyer friend who had often advised me informally. This time, I was seeking professional counsel. They actually filled out loan documents in your name, Carolyn asked, examining the photos I'd discreetly taken of the paperwork with your personal information and forged initials. Yes, I confirmed. Everything except the final signature. Natalie, that's identity theft and fraud. These are serious crimes. Her expression was grave. Do you want to press charges? Caught me off guard. Caught charges against my parents. I don't know. You don't have to decide right now, she assured me. But we should document everything while it's fresh. And you need to protect yourself from further attempts. Over the next 2 hours, Caroline helped me create a detailed timeline of my financial contributions, instances of pressure, and the final fraudulent loan attempt. She advised me to pull my credit reports, place freezes on my accounts, and change all passwords and security questions. Your family knows all your personal information, she reminded me. Mother's maiden name, childhood pet, everything banks typically use for security. You need new questions they can't possibly answer. After leaving Carolyn's office, I checked into a different hotel, unwilling to return to my condo where my family might find me. I spent the afternoon implementing her security recommendations and researching apartments in other parts of the city. By evening, I had scheduled viewings for the next day. My phone remained off. I knew there would be messages, guilt trips, perhaps eventually apologies designed to pull me back into the cycle. I wasn't ready to face any of it. On the third day, I viewed 7 apartments and signed a lease on a modest one-bedroom in a secure building with controlled access. It was in a neighborhood my family rarely visited, with no convenient parking where they might spot my car. Rent was reasonable, allowing me to begin rebuilding my savings while maintaining distance. I arranged for essential items to be delivered directly: a bed, basic kitchen supplies, towels. Everything else could wait. I wasn't running away. I was strategically retreating to establish boundaries that should have existed years ago. On day 4, I briefly activated my phone to check work emails, intentionally avoiding personal messages. There were 37 missed calls and 63 texts from my family. I deleted them all without reading, then emailed my building manager to revoke my parents' access to my condo. I had given them emergency keys years ago, another boundary I now recognized as problematic. By the end of the week, I had created a new email address for professional contacts, packed essential personal items from my condo during hours my family would be at work, and set up mail forwarding to a post office box. I wasn't hiding exactly, but I was making myself deliberately inaccessible to the people who had exploited my availability for years. The second week brought unexpected peace. I worked remotely from my new apartment, established a routine that prioritized self-care, and began seeing Dr. Larson twice weekly to process my decision. "What you're experiencing now is both grief and relief," she explained. "You're mourning the family you wished you had while feeling liberated from the family you actually had. Both emotions are valid." I nodded, recognizing the complex mixture of feelings. "I keep waiting to feel guilty for cutting them off, but mostly I feel lighter. The guilt may come," she cautioned. "When it does, remember that establishing boundaries isn't punishment, it's protection. You're not doing this to hurt them. You're doing it to heal yourself." In my third week of separation, I contacted Emma, who had moved to Chicago. 2 years earlier, I gave her my new contact info with strict instructions not to share it. "I always knew it would come to this," she said during our video call. "I just didn't know what would finally push you over the edge." Attempted financial fraud seemed like a reasonable line in the sand. I replied with unexpected humor. Emma's expression turned serious. "You've checked any of their social media?" "Cold turkey." "Why?" She hesitated. "They're posting about you, making it sound like you abandoned them. Your mother wrote this long post about ingratitude and family loyalty that's clearly about you." I absorbed this with surprising detachment. Let them tell whatever story makes them feel better. The people who really know me won't believe it, and the people who don't. I shrugged. Opinion of me isn't my concern anymore. The realization felt revolutionary. After a lifetime of managing others' perceptions, I was finally prioritizing my own truth. By the 4th week, I had settled into my new apartment and returned to the office. Colleagues noticed my changed demeanor, more relaxed, more focused, less likely to jump at every phone notification. I began rebuilding my savings and researching career opportunities in other cities, not because I needed to flee further, but because I was finally free to consider possibilities beyond my family's gravitational pull. Exactly 1 month after I walked out, I received an email from my building manager. My family had tried to access my condo, claiming emergency concerns. Security had refused them entry. The manager reported they had created a scene in the lobby, resulting in police escorting them from the property. That evening, I finally turned on my personal phone. It immediately buzzed with notifications. 57 missed calls, over 100 texts, dozens of voicemails, and numerous emails. The most recent one showed escalating desperation. "Natalie, this isn't funny anymore. Call us. We're filing a missing persons report if you don't respond. The bank is foreclosing next week. We need you. Why are you punishing us like this? Your father had chest pains from the stress you're causing." The final message, received hours earlier, caught my attention. "We know you went to your condo today. The building called us. Stop hiding and face your family. The blatant lie claiming the building had contacted them when I knew security had removed them confirmed. I'd made the right decision. They were still manipulating, still lying, still refusing to respect basic boundaries. I didn't respond. Instead, I changed my phone number, sharing the new contact only with Emma, Dr. Larson, and my workplace. The final cord connecting me to my toxic family dynamic was cut. That night, I slept peacefully in my new apartment, surrounded by minimal possessions but maximum tranquility. For the first time, every dollar I earned was mine to save or spend. Every hour was mine to allocate without crisis interruptions. Every decision was mine to make without justification or apology. I wasn't just surviving. I was finally beginning to live. 6 weeks after my departure, the situation escalated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Through Emma, who still occasionally checked their social media, I learned my parents had intensified their public campaign against me. My mother posted tearful videos claiming I'd abandoned them without explanation. My father wrote long posts about ungrateful children. Audrey shared cryptic wellness quotes about toxic people disguised as victims, clearly aimed at me. Most disturbingly, they had somehow gotten my work email and started contacting colleagues with concerns about my mental health crisis and erratic behavior. My boss, Michael, called me into his office. "Want you to know I'm not taking any of this at face value," he assured me, showing me the emails. "But I needed to make you aware." I felt a surge of anger and embarrassment. According to my parents, I was suffering from delusions, had impulsively emptied my accounts, and might be under the influence of a negative friend who was isolating me. "None of this is true," I said, meeting Michael's eyes. "I've established distance from my family due to years of financial exploitation that culminated in attempted fraud. I'm not in crisis. In fact, I'm healthier than I've been in years." Michael nodded. "I suspected as much. Your work has been exceptional lately, and you seem more focused. How would you like me to handle further communications?" His support was a turning point. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to manage this alone. Would it be possible to block their emails at the server level? And if they call, simply inform them this is a workplace and personal matters should be handled elsewhere. "Consider it done," Michael said. "And Natalie, if you need additional support, the company has programs available." Walking back to my desk, I felt a strange new sensation, professional protection extending to my personal boundaries. It was so different from the dynamic I'd grown up with that it took me a moment to recognize it as normal. Healthy workplace behavior. That evening, I met with Caroline again. She advised me to send a formal cease and desist letter addressing both the fraudulent loan attempt and the defamation campaign. "It creates a paper trail," she explained. "If they continue, we have documentation." I hesitated, still struggling with legal action against my family. Will this make things worse? Honestly, in the short term, probably, Caroline acknowledged. But it establishes consequences they've clearly never faced from you before. Sometimes things get worse before they get better. After careful consideration, I authorized Caroline to send the letter, which was delivered 3 days later by certified mail. The response was immediate and predictable, a barrage of messages to my new email, which Emma had unfortunately shared, accusing me of betrayal, cruelty, and ingratitude. "How could you threaten legal action against your own parents after everything we've sacrificed for you?" my mother wrote. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I forwarded the emails to Caroline, who documented them as evidence of continued harassment. The unexpected turning point came 2 months after my departure, when I received an email from an unfamiliar address. "Your brother Jason told me how to reach you." The sender identified himself as Thomas Bennett, the commercial property manager for my parents' shopping center. He explained the hardware store had officially shuttered after missing 3 months of rent. During the cleanout, he'd found financial records indicating potentially fraudulent business practices. Normally, I just turn these over to the property owner's legal team, he wrote. But since your name appears on several documents, some apparently without your legitimate signature, I thought you should be aware before it potentially escalates. 2 criminal proceedings, I immediately called Carolyn, who arranged for us to meet Thomas the next day. The documents he provided were shocking. Loan applications with my forged signature, credit accounts opened in my name without my knowledge, and business insurance policies listing me as a co-owner when I had never held any official position. This goes well beyond what you initially described, Carolyn said gravely. This is systematic identity theft and fraud conducted over at least the past 2 years. Thomas explained he'd approached Jason during the cleanout, asking about financial discrepancies. After several beers at a nearby bar, Jason had revealed much of the family's scheme, apparently not realizing the criminal nature of what he was describing. He seemed to think it was normal, Thomas explained, borrowing your credit because you owed the family for raising you. The revelation left me reeling. The betrayal was deeper and more calculated than I'd imagined. This wasn't a desperate, one-time attempt, but a long-standing pattern of exploitation. What are my options? I asked Caroline. She outlined 3 paths. Report everything to police and press charges. Settle privately with a legally binding agreement requiring them to rectify the fraud, or do nothing and hope the consequences didn't eventually fall on me as an apparent co-signer. Doing nothing is the riskiest option, she cautioned. Some of these documents could make you liable for debts you never agreed to take on. After careful consideration and several sleepless nights, I chose the middle path. Caroline drafted a settlement agreement requiring my family to formally acknowledge the fraudulent documents, work with credit agencies to remove all unauthorized accounts, and maintain strict financial separation from me going forward. In exchange, I would not pursue criminal charges. The agreement was delivered to my parents along with copies of the fraudulent documents and a clear deadline: sign within 7 days or face criminal fraud charges. 3 days later, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Audrey stood in the reception area, looking considerably less polished than usual. She'd lost weight, and her normally perfect makeup couldn't conceal the dark circles under her eyes. "Can we talk?" she asked when I approached. "Just for a few minutes, please." Against my better judgment, I agreed to a brief conversation at a nearby coffee shop. We sat in uncomfortable silence until Audrey finally spoke. "They're going to sign the agreement," she said, staring into her untouched latte. "Dad didn't want to, but the lawyer they consulted made it clear they don't have a choice." I nodded, unsurprised. "That's good. Is it true?" she asked, suddenly looking up at me. "All of it? The forged signatures? The credit accounts?" "Yes," I replied simply. "Did you not know?" She shook her head slowly. "I knew they were using your credit for some things, but I thought you had agreed to it. They always said you were helping voluntarily because you had so much while we struggled." The familiar narrative made me sigh. "Audrey, I did help voluntarily for years. I gave them money I could afford. What I didn't agree to was having my identity stolen and my financial future put at risk without my knowledge." She was quiet for a long moment. "The house is being foreclosed on next week. Dad's talking about declaring bankruptcy. Jason's staying with friends. Mom's not doing well." I recognized the implicit request beneath the information. They needed money again. And Audrey had been sent as the new emissary. "I'm sorry they're struggling," I said carefully. "But I can't be their solution anymore, even knowing we'll be homeless." Her voice cracked slightly. "You're 37. I reminded her gently. "You have a yoga certification. You could get a job, find an apartment. Mom and Dad could downsize to something affordable. Jason could finally support himself. These are normal adult responsibilities, not catastrophes." Audrey's expression hardened. "So that's it? Years of family just thrown away because you're too selfish to help when we really need it." The familiar accusation no longer had power over me. "This isn't about one financial crisis, Audrey. It's about decades of being blamed, manipulated, and exploited. It's about identity theft and fraud. It's about respect and boundaries that have never existed in our family. You always think you're better than us, she said bitterly, standing to leave. Enjoy your perfect life while we suffer. As she walked away, I felt a complex mixture of sadness and relief. The conversation confirmed what I had suspected. Nothing had fundamentally changed in their perspective. I was still the villain in their story, despite being the victim of their crimes. But something had changed in me. I no longer felt responsible for their choices or guilty about my boundaries. Their financial collapse wasn't a failure of my support, but the natural consequence of years of mismanagement and magical thinking. That evening, as I cooked dinner in my peaceful apartment, I realized I had reached a true turning point. I was no longer waiting for their understanding, approval, or validation. I was no longer hoping for reconciliation on healthier terms. I had accepted the family I actually had, not the one I had always wished for. And in that acceptance came the freedom to build a life without their chaos at its center. 3 months after my departure, the consequences of decades of financial mismanagement finally caught up with my family. Their house was foreclosed on, the hardware store permanently closed, and my father filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Through Emma's occasional updates, I learned they had separated into different living situations. My parents moved into a small apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. Jason couch surfed among friends, and Audrey took a job at a yoga studio in Boulder that included housing in exchange for teaching extra classes. The settlement agreement was formally executed with my parents acknowledging and rectifying this fraudulent use of my identity. Caroline helped me work with credit bureaus to remove the unauthorized accounts and loans from my record, a process that would take months to fully resolve but had begun in earnest. Professionally, I was thriving. Freed from constant family emergencies, I could fully focus on my work and career development. When a senior position opened in my company's Seattle office, I applied without hesitation. The geographic distance would provide another layer of separation from my past, and the coastal city had always appealed to me. The interview process moved quickly, and by month 4 of my independence, I had received and accepted an offer with a significant salary increase and relocation package. Michael, my Denver manager, was supportive. "You've been an exceptional team member," he said during our final 101. "But more importantly, I've seen your personal growth these past few months. You seem more confident, more centered." "I feel that way," I admitted. Setting boundaries has been transformative. The night before I left Denver, Emma flew in from Chicago to help with final packing and to celebrate this new chapter. We ordered takeout and sat among the boxes in my nearly empty apartment. "Are you having any second thoughts?" she asked, studying my face. "About the move or about the family situation?" I considered the question seriously. "About the move? Not at all. I'm excited for a fresh start about my family." I paused, searching for the right words. I sometimes feel sad about what could have been, but not about what I did. "That was necessary." Emma nodded. "I've never seen you this at peace. It's like you've been carrying this invisible weight your whole life, and now it's gone." "That's exactly how it feels," I agreed. "Like I can finally stand up straight." We talked late into the night, reminiscing about college days and planning a future visit to Seattle. Before leaving, Emma handed me a small gift box. "Open it on your first night in the new place," she instructed with a smile. The drive to Seattle took 2 days, giving me ample time to reflect on the dramatic changes. I had lost my family, but found myself. The trade, while painful, felt increasingly worth it as I put more distance, both literal and figurative, between my past and future. My new apartment was in a modern building near Lake Union with large windows and water views. After the movers left, I unpacked essentials and then remembered Emma's gift. Inside the small box was a delicate silver necklace with a phoenix pendant. From the ashes, her note read, "So proud of who you're becoming." The gesture brought unexpected tears. Throughout my life, I had received so little genuine support or celebration. Emma's consistent friendship had been a rare exception, a preview of the healthier relationships that could exist outside my family dynamic. My new position began the following Monday. The team welcomed me warmly, and I found myself volunteering ideas, speaking confidently about projects, and even suggesting social outings, all behaviors that would have been impossible during my family-dominated years when every moment and dollar was potentially subject to emergency reallocation. 6 months after leaving Denver, I received an unexpected email from Jason. The subject line read simply, "I get it now, Natalie," he wrote. "I've been in therapy for 3 months. Started because I couldn't keep a job or relationship and blamed everyone else. Turns out I'm the common denominator in my problems. The therapist helped me see the family pattern, how mom and dad created roles for each of us. How you got stuck being the responsible one while Audrey and I never had to grow up. I'm not asking for money or even forgiveness right now. Just wanted you to know that at least one of us is starting to understand what you did and why. Take care of yourself. In Seattle, maybe someday we can talk, Jay." I read the email several times, emotions swirling. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was the first acknowledgement from any family member that my actions might have been justified. I saved the email but didn't respond immediately, giving myself time to process this unexpected development. That weekend, I tried something new, a community sailing class on Lake Union. As a child, I'd always wanted to learn to sail, but never had the time or resources for such frivolous pursuits. Now, at 33, I was finally exploring interests beyond work and family obligation. The instructor, Daniel, was patient and encouraging. By the end of the first lesson, I had managed to help navigate the small vessel across the lake and back, feeling the exhilaration of wind and water in a way I'd never experienced. "You're a natural," Daniel commented as we secured the boat. "Will you be coming back next weekend?" "Definitely," I replied without hesitation. For the first time, I was making plans based solely on what brought me joy, not what others expected or demanded. Over the following months, I developed new friendships through sailing, local book club, and professional networking events. I began hiking in the magnificent landscapes around Seattle, often spending entire Sundays exploring trails alone, a solitude that felt peaceful rather than lonely. 8 months into my Seattle life, I finally responded to Jason's email, sharing brief updates about my new city and job. Our exchange was cautious but civil, focusing on present circumstances rather than past grievances. He had maintained sobriety for 6 months, found steady work as a sound technician, and was living independently for the first time. "Mom and Dad don't know we're in contact," he wrote. "They still blame you for everything. Audrey goes back and forth. Sometimes she sees the dysfunction. Other times she falls back into old patterns. I'm trying to stay neutral, but focused on my own recovery." His honesty was refreshing. We established boundaries for our limited communication. No discussion of money, no pressure to reconnect with our parents, no serving as messengers between family factions. It wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was a tentative bridge across what had seemed an impassable chasm. A year after leaving Denver, I received an unexpected call from Caroline. My parents had attempted to open new credit accounts using my personal information despite the legal agreement explicitly prohibiting such actions. "The good news is that the credit freezes caught it immediately," she explained. "The applications were denied, but we need to decide how to respond to this violation of the settlement." After careful consideration, I authorized Caroline to send a final warning letter stating that any further attempts would result in criminal charges with no exceptions. It was painful to take such a hard line, but necessary to protect myself from ongoing exploitation. The incident provided clarity, while Jason was showing signs of growth. My parents remained committed to their established patterns. Full reconciliation wasn't a realistic goal, at least not in the foreseeable future. This realization, while sad, was also liberating. I stopped measuring my progress by how much my family might eventually understand or accept my choices. Instead, I focused on building a life rich with meaningful work, genuine friendships, and new experiences. By the time my one-year anniversary in Seattle arrived, I had developed a community of supportive friends, advanced in my career, discovered passions for sailing and hiking, and even begun cautiously dating Daniel from the sailing class, and I had moved from instructor to student to friends to something potentially more. Taking things slowly as I learned to trust again. Looking out over Lake Union from my apartment window, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. I had lost what I once thought was essential family approval and connection, only to discover that what replaced it was far more valuable: self-respect, healthy boundaries, and authentic relationships built on mutual care rather than obligation and guilt. The most surprising discovery was how grief and growth could coexist. I still felt moments of sadness about my family's situation, still occasionally wondered if things might have been different. But those thoughts no longer dominated my life or defined my identity. They were simply part of a complex emotional landscape that included increasing joy, peace, and self-discovery. Dr. Larson, with whom I still had monthly video sessions, described it best. You've moved from surviving your family to thriving despite them. That's not just resilience, it's transformation. 2 years have passed since that fateful family meeting when I walked away from toxic patterns that had defined most of my life. Seattle has truly become home. My career has flourished, and I've built a life that feels authentically mine in ways I never imagined possible. Last month, I was promoted to marketing director, overseeing a team of 12 talented professionals. The leadership role feels natural now, built on clear communication and mutual respect rather than the manipulation and guilt tactics I grew up witnessing. My colleagues describe me as calm, fair, and decisive, qualities that emerged once I escaped the chaos of my family dynamic. My relationship with Daniel has deepened into something beautiful and healthy. 6 months ago, he moved into my apartment, bringing his cheerful golden retriever, Cooper, who has become my loyal companion on weekend hikes. Daniel understands my family history and respects the boundaries I've established, never pushing for reconciliation or questioning my decisions. His own family, warm, functional, with normal disagreements that resolve without drama, has shown me what healthy family relationships can look like. Jason and I maintain limited contact through occasional emails and video calls. It's recovery. Journey continues with inevitable setbacks, but overall progress. He's been sober for 18 months now, holds a steady job at a recording studio, and recently started dating a woman he met in his recovery program. We carefully avoid discussing our parents, focusing instead on our present lives and tentative future plans. It's not the close sibling relationship depicted in movies, but it's honest and sustainable. Audrey remains more entangled with our parents, though she too has shown small signs of growth. After the yoga studio in Boulder closed, she completed a legitimate certification as a physical therapy assistant and now works at a rehabilitation center, her first stable professional position. We've exchanged brief, cautious emails on birthdays and holidays, neither rushing toward nor completely closing the door on eventual reconnection. My parents represent the most difficult chapter. Following Caroline's final warning letter, they stopped trying to access my financial information, but continued their narrative of abandonment and betrayal. Through Jason, I learned they still speak of me as the ungrateful daughter who left them destitute, conveniently omitting the years of support I provided and the fraud that prompted my departure. I've accepted that they may never acknowledge their role or truly understand my perspective. That acceptance, while initially painful, has ultimately been freeing. I no longer measure my worth by their validation or wait for an apology that may never come. Their opinion of me has lost its power to shape my self-image or determine my choices. The most significant change, however, isn't in my external circumstances, but in my internal landscape. The persistent anxiety that once accompanied every phone call. The reflexive guilt that colored every personal indulgence. The hypervigilance that kept me constantly alert to others' needs all have gradually diminished, replaced by a steady sense of peace and self-trust. In therapy, I've come to understand that what happened with my family wasn't just about money or boundaries. It was about identity and purpose. I had been assigned the role of family savior so early that it became my entire sense of self. Walking away wasn't just rejecting their financial exploitation. It was refusing a predetermined identity that never truly fit. Creating a new identity, one based on my genuine interests, values, and choices, has been the most challenging and rewarding aspect of this journey. I've discovered that I love sailing in all weather, that I have a talent for mentoring junior colleagues, that I'm capable of forming healthy romantic attachments despite my family background, and that solitude can be nourishing rather than lonely. The most profound lesson I've learned is about the nature of family itself. For years, I believed that biological connection created an unbreakable obligation. That family loyalty should supersede all other considerations, including self-preservation. Now, I understand that true family, whether biological or chosen, is built on mutual respect, reciprocal care, and healthy boundaries. This understanding has allowed me to create a chosen family here in Seattle, close friends who celebrate my successes without envy, support me through challenges without keeping score, and love me for who I am rather than what I can provide. Our holiday gatherings, weekend adventures, and quiet evenings together have shown me what genuine connection feels like. The warmth without the burn. Financial recovery has been another significant aspect of my journey. After years of supporting my family, my savings were severely depleted. Through careful budgeting, career advancement, freedom from constant family emergencies, I've rebuilt my financial security. My retirement accounts are growing again. I've established an emergency fund, and for the first time, I'm saving for personal goals like eventual home ownership and international travel. The material comfort is nice, but the psychological freedom is invaluable. I no longer panic when my phone rings with an unknown number. No longer dread checking my email for fear of discovering another family crisis requiring immediate financial intervention. Money has returned to its proper place as a tool for living, rather than a measure of love or loyalty. If I could speak to others trapped in toxic family dynamics, I would offer this hard-won wisdom. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. Real love doesn't demand self-destruction. Your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice for people who won't do the same for you. And most importantly, it's never too late to rewrite your story. My family predicted I would come crawling back. They were right about one thing. I did eventually realize what I'd done. I'd saved myself. Not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. I'd reclaimed my right to determine my own priorities, to invest in my own well-being, to live authentically rather than according to a script written by others. The journey hasn't been easy or linear. There are still moments of doubt, days of grief for the family relationships I wish I had. But those moments no longer define me or determine my path forward. They're simply part of a complex emotional landscape that includes increasing joy, deepening connections with my chosen family, and genuine excitement about the future I'm creating. So, no, I didn't come crawling back. I walked forward, sometimes stumbling, often uncertain, but always moving toward a life of authenticity and peace. And in that walking, I've discovered something my family never understood. True strength isn't found in control or manipulation, but in the courage to release what hurts you, even when it comes wrapped in the powerful language of family loyalty. If you're watching this and struggling with similar family dynamics, know that you're not alone. Your story matters, your boundaries are valid, and your future is worth fighting for. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is quietly walk away from what's breaking you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Or have you found yourself in the role of family fixer, like I was? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic conversations about family dynamics, healing, and personal growth. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you courage on yours.